Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. I'd like to introduce you to a couple of folks that I have come to know and admire greatly. The first is Michael Grinder with Michael Grinder and Associates. He has championed the Envoy work and lots about nonverbal communication. I know many of you who know me have heard his name come out of my mouth a lot. And also joining us today is his daughter, Krista. She is a English language learner itinerant working across 3 elementary schools in the Vancouver School District. And in her spare time, she works with Michael Grinder and Associates as well. So I'd like to thank them so much for coming and go ahead and introduce themselves and give a little bit about their background and what's brought them to this point in their career.
So I'm retired from the classroom, but not from education. Taught 17 years in California, Oregon, and Washington. I started teaching in Watts and Compton, just as a background. And since not being in the classroom anymore, I go into classroom after classroom and try to discover nonverbal patterns of communication, write them up, put them in a package, and give them to people so that their life as a teacher is more rewarding.
Thank you. And Krista?
So I have been in education for 25 plus years, as Michael said, and I refer to him as MG. So as MG said, he started in California, Oregon, and Washington. I started in California, then Washington, then Missouri, then Washington. So having some different background with that in various positions throughout that time as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate you giving your time to those of us in Central Oregon. We really appreciate it. So kind of thinking through, we know that we are facing unprecedented times in education. We know this is something we have never seen before with COVID-19 and distance learning. As we are stepping into this new realm, I decided to come to some experts and ask a few questions to maybe get some tips together for teachers. And first today, we're going to talk a bit about, now that we're learning from distance and we're teaching at a distance, we're going to talk a bit about the challenges that teachers are facing. So as we enter into distance learning, it's new and challenging. What kind of tips would you both give teachers for building student relationships in this new distance learning?
Krista has some fine PowerPoints that she's going to share with you.
And right before we go into the PowerPoints, Erin, just want to say that question of relationships is key. It is the foundation, especially with all of our socially emotional curriculum coming through, and what a better time to make sure that socially emotional is like one of our top priorities right now with all that's going on. And we've already started the school year with distance learning at the school district I'm in right now. So kind of seeing what has been already happening, and the counselor who said, you know, socially emotional is not just for our students, it's for our teachers as well. And so we need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves so we can take care of our students. And relationship is key. It is so key. As educators, we're in this with our heart, and that's part of the relationship. So how do we connect with our students? And so MG and I are going to go through like our top 3 things that we discussed in terms of nonverbals. And some of them you're going to say, that's not quite nonverbal, but it comes across as a nonverbal message. And so we're going to go through our top 3, and then we're going to give you little tips on the side as well at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. So here's our non-verbals. Top 3 tips from MGA. The first one is breathing low. And MG, if you go through our way of knowing, are we breathing low?
So if you're right-handed, take your non-dominant hand, put it on your abdomen, and then you allow your dominant hand to do the gesturing. So when you present digitally, make sure that your hand is resting here. And if you can feel it going in and out, I'm going to exaggerate, you know you're breathing low. Why do you want to breathe low? We're going to show you that. But just breathe low. It'll make all the difference in the world, and you'll enjoy yourself even more.
Tip number 2 is visuals. When we're releasing our students to do independent work, picture yourself back in the classroom. And when you're back in the classroom and you're giving those exit directions or directions to exit yourself from being the one giving the information to them being able to utilize that information and show some independent work, if we go verbal, it is really hard. And of course, I'm going to put on my ELL hat right now.
Yeah.
And our English language learners, if we're just going verbal, it is so hard for them to regurgitate that information because they're trying to translate, they're trying to connect, and then boom, it's all gone. So if we can, as educators, as MG is kind of showing on his piece of paper, you can use take out a piece of paper, a whiteboard. As you can see, there's a whiteboard behind me. You can use a whiteboard, or for us techie people, if you can type it in, then you have it, yes, then you have it up for your students to identify what they're supposed to do. There's a tip that MG talks about in his presentations, and it's so key, and it's not just for elementary. If you can have words and icons or pictures. MG, can you talk a little bit about right brain, left brain, and why is it that we're using pictures even at a high school level?
Even at a high school level. So it's not a question whether they can read or not. It's whether they can understand. So anytime you use even a stick figure, that goes to a different part of the brain than where the words go. If you do both, it's the very, very best. So English as a second language, please, please pretend all your students are, and you'll actually be a better teacher. The other thing, Chris, if I may add, please stay away from having you look at the camera while you have your visuals. Make sure you turn sideways so that you are looking. Why? If you look at them as well as point to your visuals, they won't follow your hand. They'll only do your eyes. So they're going to be polite and keep eye contact. Whereas if you take your eye and hand and you put it in the same location, they'll follow it. So please, 2 kinds of visuals. Make sure you turn sideways and look at the visuals.
And tag teaming off of what you were saying in terms of where you're looking, another visual aspect is where we're looking as we're delivering information. If we can adjust our camera, and hopefully I got the camera adjusted as I'm talking about this, like walk your talk type thing. But if you can adjust it, where do your eyes go when you're presenting? Is it to your image? Is it to your presentation? Make sure that that is up by your camera. So your eyes are going more towards the camera. Why? The students are looking at you, and if let's just say that I have something that's down in the corner of my monitor and I'm looking at that the whole time, I think I'm talking to you, but non-verbally you're saying you're not even looking at me. Look up towards the camera, videotape yourself. You can do this on Zoom and other platforms. Replay it back and say, where were my eyes? If your eyes are close to the camera, you're right on. If your eyes are off the camera, it's kind of like when we're in the classroom. When we're not looking at them, they feel like, oh, you're not talking to me. But when you're looking at them, they feel like, okay, I'm paying attention. You're talking to me. This is important. Just another little piece of where are your eyes?
One of the ways to make that extremely easy is if you can have the level of where the eye camera is be the same as your eyes balls. Because if you have it down low and you're talking down like this to it, they're going to look up your nose. So instead of them checking out your nostrils, have them check out your brain. Now, the more you can take whatever's on your screen and move it up by the actual camera lens, look at that. Watch. If I look down here to read content, it's different than if I look at you. So the more you know your content, the more you can peripherally read it, but keep your eyes on the camera itself.
And knowing your content and understanding that there's so much new content coming through, we don't have all of the different little things that we could go to, or if you can, if there is a way to get a dual monitor or to have 2 screens up, it's really going to save you in terms of an educator. Just a little tip in regards to that as well.
Make sure that second monitor, as much as possible, is behind it. So you're looking directly this way. If you look this way, if you can switch over just for a second and show me. So if you're looking here and you look over at the other monitor, that is different than if the monitor's on top of it and you look up. So if you can, try to keep your monitors in line with each other.
And that goes to our facial messages. Our facial gestures send different messages. And with that, we are going to go through elementary and secondary. I'll play elementary. MG, if you can do secondary. When you're elementary, we like to smile because we want to be likable. Now, as I'm talking, I'm going to be bobbing my head, and bobbing my head creates a rhythmic voice, which is approachable, likable, friendly. How do you build relationships with your students? It's going to be through these different pieces of nonverbals, facials, tone, all of those different pieces. If we can practice those different pieces for meaning, we're going to deliver a message that is actually going to be building relationships with our students. If I came across too robotic like this for my kindergartners, I'm losing them. I have to adapt myself, and it's almost like if you've ever taken a drama class, they say in drama, you exaggerate just a little bit to get your point across. And this is true electronically. If I stay just little, even little in my gestures and little in my everything, it's only going to come across a little bit. I want to make sure I'm coming fully across. And so I'm going to practice bobbing my head as I talk, because when I bob my head, you hear how friendly it is. And I want to come across as warm. How do we step into the student's world, even though we're not physically together? And this is a huge piece for that. MG, can you go into the secondary?
So like Krista was saying, the lower the grade level, the more you tend to bob your head and smile. But you also tilt your head on a regular basis. So what we want to do is we want to keep our head as straight as possible if we can. But instead of smiling, you have to make sure you're breathing low. If you don't breathe low, this will not work at all. So make sure non-dominant hand on abdomen, keep your head fairly still, go ahead and talk, and you'll be fine in terms of this kind of communication. If you want to talk slower to get your message across, make sure you gesture. You have to make sure the hand cannot go towards the screen, the camera, because it'll get too big and your head will look small. So keep your hand close to yourself and go ahead and talk with your hand, then pause and make sure you keep the hand frozen, and only after you start to talk again do you move the hand. So hand only moves when voice comes out. Now, for me, what we're talking about in terms of this digital reality, I had my comeuppance when I was presenting to large groups of teachers and doing quite well until I got above 1,500 people. It was a state convention, particular Northwest state, and I was there and I was all ready because I knew how to watch a group, an audience, how they responded, and I could respond to them. That's what face-to-face communication is. But I was too big of an audience. So they had the big screens behind me because they couldn't see me from the back of the room. But what I didn't know, they dimmed the lights for the first 30 rows. I had no feedback. So I understand digital communication, distance learning. There's no feedback. So what did I do? I want to suggest this is one of those secrets in terms of distance learning. You got to fall in love with your own content. You got to be able to go something like this. I've always been fascinated by, and you're in love with your content. Now, how do you learn this? If you're a veteran teacher, most of the veteran teachers have learned how to communicate with in person so that when you're doing studio, distant learning, you have to remember, how long do I normally pause when I say that? It's the same thing that actors do. Best actors always go back to theater because it's live. And once they know how to do live, then when they do movies and they're doing in studio, they know how long to pause. So if I may, please fall in love with your own content. Make sure your passion for what you want to communicate comes across. Secondary students love passion.
And with that passion, talking about, as you were just saying, how can we pace ourselves without that feedback? Want to recommend that you get feedback from your coworkers. How can we help support each other? And this is an unusual year. It's up in the air. Are we going to be in person? Are we going to be hybrid? Are we going to be distance learning? Are we going to go back and forth? And so for some people, they're saying, well, last spring, I was not willing to put a lot of effort and time into it because it was a short time period. Well, this year, we're saying, no, this is our new reality. It's worth it to put the time and effort into it. So we're going to say and suggest, if you can videotape yourself, get a second opinion on what is my message? What is my message in my face? What is my message in my voice tone? And pacing. As Ebony was just saying, we get so much feedback from our students, and without that feedback, we don't know how we are coming across. For instance, if I am a very fast talker and I am just trying to get all of my information out, I'm still trying to breathe low, but if I talk this fast, I'm gonna lose my kids, and actually what I end up producing is hyperactivity on the other end. If I know I'm a fast talker, or if I've gotten feedback from other people that I'm a fast talker, a recommendation is to have a soft music playing, as MG has some headphones on right now, and he's like, okay, if I'm a fast talker, how do I get my metabolism lower? Because my metabolism getting lower is creating a lower metabolism for my students. I will have some form of slow beat music in the background. My kids can't hear it, but I can hear it. That paces me as a presenter, as an educator, to slow down. Vice versa. If I'm too slow, I want an upbeat tempo to help get, it's like the metronome in music. Who is helping us pace? It's the pacing of that beat. We have one more thing to talk about in terms of relationship building. How do you build relationship? Last year, we went into this distance learning, but we had already built relationships, so we could use that relationship for our distance learning. This year, for most of us, we haven't met our students. Some of us we have. But for most of us, this is a new beginning. This is a new connection. How do we create that relationship electronically? It seems so cold. So how do we bring warmth into this process? So here's a couple just little tips. MG, I'm sure you have some as well. What is my background? Because your background is actually creating a message. It's a visual message. It's a nonverbal message. If I have something extremely cold, such as just a black or a blank wall in the back, there's no depth to that. Yeah, they can see me, but they're not connecting with me. Utilize, it's like location, location, location. If you, in real estate, if you can utilize the real estate that you have, do it. But realize what the message is with that real estate. Behind me, I want to build something that is inspiring. So I have several quotes behind me. I'm also supporting MGA, as you can see his books behind me as well. But let's just say that I'm an elementary teacher. How do I have them connect with me? I need to start to think, how do I represent myself? And I might just say, hey, I want to be Winnie the Pooh. My kids might like Winnie the Pooh. I love Winnie the Pooh. I would have a background with Winnie the Pooh. Then they would connect with me with that Winnie the Pooh. Let's say that the class is into sports. I would then have sporting things behind me, and I would be then connecting that way. Something else for community building is to have a learning mat. And a learning mat then creates community. If we say that our theme for our class is sports, can the kids bring in something that has sports, whether it's a blanket or a towel, or this is a pillowcase, and we all share, are we ready for our class? Yes, I've got my learning mat ready. And this learning mat then is connected to some guidelines of when you're ready to learn. Your eyes are on the screen, your ears are available, you're settled, you're dressed. Kindergarten, I've seen some of those videos, yes. What does your learning mat represent? And this has so many potential pieces to it. Community building. The teacher can then say if one of the students is going off the guidelines for when we're together, the teacher can say, ooh, reminder of learning mat, what's our expectations? And then go back to the learning. How are you connecting with your students? How are you representing you? And that's going to be your background.
Mhm. Nice. Yeah. One last thing. If you are a veteran teacher and you can pull this off, what you do is you increase curiosity. If I have something here, and if I look at it instead of look at you, you will follow my eyes and you'll look at it. If I do not introduce it immediately, set it down, look at it there for just a second, then go back and do my lesson. If you teach, especially middle school, they are fascinated by it. So if you are a veteran teacher, being weird about something absolutely works. So you have to make sure, what's your reputation? They don't know you, but you still have a reputation. Do you have a reputation that allows you to really be inspirational? You have to tie it in at some point, but don't do it right away. Otherwise, they won't pay attention. Tease them. Tease them. It's coming. And if you do that consistently, man, they're looking forward to what's the next thing that we're going to see.
I hope those tips, the top 3 and the other ideas, help ease this coming year. And the passion that we have is, how do we support such a wonderful profession? Think about implementing just little bits at a time. Where's your comfort level? And just follow what is the most bang for my buck at this time, and that's what I'm going to do. And then come back and maybe think of something else to do.
Thank you for being in education. Stay with it. Stay with it, please.
I can't thank you guys enough for joining us today. I appreciate your time and your energy. And as we leave, if they're interested in learning more, purchasing a book, checking you out, where can they go?
Easy to follow with the website. It's the name.com. So michaelgrinder.com. If you go to michaelgrinder.com, be prepared. There's so much information there that you might be, well, set your timer at least, right? Because there is just a plethora of information. You can go into education, you can go into personal, you can go into professional, and share that website with others. I know my husband's in business, and there's things there for him, and I'm in education, and there's things there for me. So have fun exploring.
And again, thank you for being an educator.
And I would like to thank you both one last time for these helpful tips. Please go to their website, check them out, and we look forward to seeing you all soon, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin.
Welcome, welcome.